Welcome to the second panel, and this panel will be all about carbon. And we are going to talk about carbon emissions in particular, and as you know, there are a few things around the corner, and we will address this during our panel today. And we have put together an excellent panel who is perfectly placed to discuss all about carbon. And I'll start from the very left-hand side. Yes, do the greetings. And that is Friederike Hesse. Friederike Hesse is co-founder and managing director of 044. It's a Berlin-based startup that helps to manage and to monitor CO2 emissions and CII compliance. And then to the next, we have Frederic Bouthillier, who runs the shipping desk at Vertis. Vertis is a company that is specialized in emission trading and in certificate trading. And Frederic, you might want to adjust that a little bit in your beginning, but that's fine. And then we have Tim Ponath. Tim is CEO of Reederei NSB. It's a full suite ship manager with more than 60 ships under contract right now. And then we have, that is Sander Schakelaar, managing owner of JR Shipping from the Netherlands, managing a fleet of about 15 modern feeder vessels, mainly here in Europe. And then we have, to my left-hand side, we have Jens Arndt, who is the managing partner of Vogemann Reederei here in Hamburg. And Vogemann Reederei is active in bulk shipping, and they have presently 15 ships in water and about 20 on order. So the panel, as I said, is all about carbon. And we all know that IMO has committed to decarbonize shipping until 2030. The carbon reduction has to be about 20%. And then net zero is envisioned for 2050. And in addition, and that will be the first topic of our discussion today, is European Union. And European Union has extended the emission trading into shipping. So it started from other industries, and now shipping is included in the so-called EU ETS. And EU ETS requires owners or their delegated companies to acquire emission allowances and to distribute those costs to the cargo owners and to their charterers. And for a medium-sized shipping company, this could be a liability of several million US dollars every year. So, with EU ETS around the corner, and we have only 54 days to go until it's going live, we have to look a little bit critical at how well is the German shipping industry and the shipping industry globally prepared for EU ETS. And I'd like to start with the first question to Friederike. Friederike, what do you think? How well is the industry prepared?
Yeah, hi, good morning everyone. I think what you left out in the introduction is that we're actually working on EU ETS management with our company, and that's why I think that's the only reason I can answer this question, or maybe try to, because we're talking obviously to a lot of shipping companies, be it owners, managers, charterers, about the regulation and their preparedness. And our perception is the level of preparedness is not very high, because obviously shipping companies are always busy and the onshore teams have had limited time to get their heads around the regulation. They've had limited time to organize internal processes to deal with the new regulation. So that's the challenge in itself. And then we hear from our partners that it's hardly any charter agreements have been negotiated yet or closed yet where ETS is really agreed on, right? How do we want to organize this? Who is buying the certificate? Who is receiving them? And what rhythm do we want to settle this? There's a BIMCO clause for time charters, but it's hardly ever applied. In some cases, yes, but in the majority of cases, no. So we don't have the agreements in place, and there's only 54 days left. Have you calculated that? So that worries us a bit. I think there's time to heal it in the first quarter, but it's probably good advice to everyone to really put focus on this topic now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that was a curveball. I think we have shipping companies on the panel. Tim, I'd like to follow up with you. How did NSB prepare for EU ETS, and which are the biggest challenges that you are facing? So, do you agree with Friederike?
Yes. Good morning from my side as well. So. There's a saying that diamonds are created under high pressure. So even though the time is quite short, we had time to prepare ourselves. And saying this, we have various aspects. So we have, of course, to apply all the systems, which is more an internal subject. And then, of course, we have to find agreements, as Frederic said, with the charterers on how do we deal with the allowances. And of course, there is a wide variety of how they want to treat this and how they want to deal with it. And that's, for us, at least visible if you talk about CII. So that's, of course, not on the agenda any longer, but if I see that for a few charterers, I have not a solution for CII next year, for a few vessels which are not necessarily trading in A or B, so then I'm not coming to the point that I can talk about EU ETS yet. So, and that's the challenge I have. And in addition to Knut, what he said, what are the challenges of future? Beside crewing, I see it's the rules and regulations which we need to face with. And so from that point of view, there's still something to do, but finally we need to make it. So we need to make it happen, and there is no choice, no way out for us.
Yeah. Have you made any organizational changes, or has it had an impact on your business model so far?
What should I say? So looking to the past, maybe we are used to apply new things. So there was ballast water treatment systems where we were afraid in the very beginning, or how does it work, or even long time earlier it was very low steaming. Then recently we had the sulfur cap. So, and a lot of people said, oh well, how does this work? But the coming rules and regulation, and especially if we see EU Fuel Maritime 1 year later, so there are of course impacts on our business. Is it on the business model itself? I wouldn't say so, but it's of course on how do we operate vessels in the future, and what is the lifetime? So how likely is it that an owner wants to invest in the upgrades needed? And I like the comparison from Robert, and this was exactly the figure I'm looking for, because as we are operating as well older tonnage, so when, let's say, is the break even of renewing a ship? So, and with the figures heard, so is it 20 years, is it 25 years, and what makes commercially sense? So, and that's the challenge. So I don't see a big impact on the business model itself, but we need to adapt, that's for sure.
Thank you, Tim. And Jens, I think you're taking a little bit of a different perspective. You're coming from the bulk sector. And how did you prepare for the CO2 challenge? I think you have a very special strategy here.
Yeah, first of all, good morning.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, our strategy, let's put it this way. My favorite rock band is called Guided by Voices. And my favorite song of this band is called I'm a Scientist. But I'm neither guided by voices nor I'm a scientist. So our strategy is really pretty simple. We also don't have a crystal ball, but what we know, or what we believe to know, is that bunker prices, fuel prices, will only go in one direction on the long term, and this is up. So what we did and what we decided is to go for the most fuel-efficient vessels you can buy for money, and we are not in favor, at least not yet, to build or order dual-fuel vessels, because we simply don't know what alternative fuel will make it. And of course, we are, as you said, in the bulk segment. People might call Vogemann a one-trick pony, so we are really only focusing on dry bulk. And So the strategy is quite simple. Just go for very fuel-efficient vessels, and we believe it's an investment case. Our vessels, just looking at the smaller vessels, Handysize bulkers, are consuming about 1,500-1,600 tons fuel less than a standard vessel per year, which is about 5,000 tons carbon emissions per year less per vessel, and we believe it's an investment case. I wanted to say something to Frederice's comment about the BIMCO EU ETS clause. In bike shipping, this is what we experience now. It's possible to fix charters, and we are doing this right now. So I think we don't have an issue with the BIMCO EU ETS clause. And charters accept that they are eventually responsible.
Yeah. So EU ETS clause is accepted. How about CII clause?
I think it's not that important for the time being.
Yeah, okay. We will touch CII a little bit later. So let's focus on EU ETS. So I think it's great to hear also the perspective from the bulk sector. And Sander, you're in the very European and specialized feeder vessel market with your vessels. And when you look at EU ETS and your fleet, how do you plan to comply, and where do you see the main challenges for the feeder segment?
Well, good morning. Throughout my life, I've been a fan of Mr. Frank Sinatra. And he once spoke the wise words, if you want to be great, you have to eat, sleep, walk, talk, and dream it. And to be honest, I don't have a clue yet how to be great with handling EU ETS. We are trying to educate ourselves, the staff members within our company. We are trying to prepare, but we have the very big difficulty in our market segment that there is no consensus yet, or at least not a wide consensus, on how to approach things between, let's say, the tonnage providers and the charterers. There are only few charterers who have yet indicated how they imagine things to work in practice, but with the vast majority of our clients, we don't have a clue yet. So that's at least an additional challenge. So that's a different picture than from your market. We are not that much stressed about so many days to go until it's the 1st of January, because at the 1st of January, not much changes. It's the process after that point. And you also touched on the subject, how does that impact your business model or your shipping company? Yeah, I fully agree. There are lots of challenges coming up, also especially from regulations. And I think we are a mid-sized company. We have 15 container feeder vessels, some 7 offshore wind service vessels in addition. I think it will have a material impact on the economics of our group companies, because we will need additional specialized staff members, not only for the ESG and the new reporting standards, but also for, let's say, the whole fuel efficiency management and emission management and all that comes with that. So what I foresee is that we will have to increase our staff with at least 4 or 5 high-end specialists in the years to come. That will come gradually. So that will be an impact in our operational costs within the group companies of at least 500,000 euros. And that in itself is a challenge for a company like us, because that's not the operational result capacity, purely looking at operational ship management. The margins on operational ship management are not that high. So something will have to give. The question is, what will have to give? But this is a real worry. And we have to take that serious as well. And we can't let's say, leave it on the table. We have to address this. Sure.
Quite interesting. So you you mentioned that the life of a ship manager will get more complicated and it will get more costly, right? So there is certainly a challenge for the smaller ship managers then, because the stuff that you just mentioned need to be carried and borne by fewer vessels, right?
Yeah, okay, we don't consider us extremely small, but we are relatively small, and we already are aware of these upcoming challenges and have difficulty how to organize and address them. Yeah, and the economic impact it will have on the company. But in Holland, we have lots of smaller shipping companies which are very versatile and high performers, these typical Dutch captain-owning kind of companies. Yeah, and how they will tackle this, that's also a big question mark. It will need to be tackled in a collective, in a joint effort. But yeah.
I thought exactly about these sub-10 vessel companies, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that is...
But we have lots with only 1 or 2 or 3 vessels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I can,
Yes, please.
I can add something to that. And that's exactly the point, again, back to efficiency, fuel efficiency. Currently, we are talking about consumption, right? Does the consumption meet the charter party requirements, etc.? But by 1st of January, we are talking about efficiency, because depending on the size of the vessel and the consumption of the vessels, you can add the daily cost of operation in the same amount to the certificates. And then it's about, was it necessary that these auxiliary engines were running, these pumps, etc. So you could have operated with XYZ ton less. So what do you think about you pay the certificates from your side? And saying that medium-sized vessel, medium consumption, we talk about 6,000 to 7,000 US a day for allowances. So, and as you mentioned, the fee level, the earnings on the ship management side will not compensate these things. So that's the challenge from 1st January, to look into how good is your crew performing and handling the fuel on board. So SEMP was ever since something we had with us, but how well was this monitored by all parties involved?
All right. So then the challenge is more on board, how to educate the crew to run the ship in a more efficient way. That is the challenge at hand, and then the rest is happening more or less on land. Which brings us back to Frederic, actually. So, Frederic, we have now heard from European-based shipping companies, and what are your recommendations to owners to reduce their financial exposure to EU ETS?
It's just first remark, and again, thanks very much to Capital Link for the nice gathering and invitation. Actually, shipping is already in ETS because the previous panel was mentioning about FSRU, and FSRU is a ship, but it was classified under a permanent established ship. And actually, FSRU are today already covered by the EU ETS when they are in Europe and operating in Europe. So no, obviously the EU ETS is a financial market, and the EUA is a regulated product, financial regulated product. So obviously, like every market, I think the first and foremost recommendation would be to get acquainted with the market and what is driving the market. I think that's an obvious comment. Like it was also mentioned, clearly the documentation should be put in place, and obviously we are talking about whether it's the compliant entity will be the ship owner or the dock entity holder. I think it's important that charter parties are obviously covering this particular item, and that also the shipman co between the ship owner and the dock entity holder is also fully updated and covering that particular angle. I would say third, it would be very important to make sure that the emissions on board are basically monitored in the most I would say detailed way, so that you don't wait the yearly publication to know what were the emission. We saw this year that it was the first publication in June and then an amendment in September. So clearly to be able to monitor in details your emission so that you can actually pass the cost to the charterers on a voyage basis, that's obviously something important. And then obviously to prepare your compliance strategy, which depends on obviously your profile. If your approach will not be the same if you're a liner or if you're operating in trumping business. Your trading pattern will also be important, and then it's a question to then, based on all that, to establish what could be the trading procurement strategy. Here, 3 big, I would say, approaches. That can be mixed, actually. You can make an approach on the volume based on your MRV report from last year. You can obviously make a trading procurement approach based on the price and optimizing your entry point, clearly, using the usual tools. And we are today well below the 200 DMA, and it's clearly a signal to enter that market. And obviously, last but not least, the timing of the purchase, which should be triggered by the moment you can pass the cost of the EUA to your charterers, so that for an owner it will be basically financially neutral. And obviously that can be different. This timing can be different if it's a time charter, it's a voyage charter, but it's very important to have that in mind so that it can be done in the most efficient way. That's I would say the recommendation. Transparency obviously is very well should be underlined. Transparency in the exchange with the charterers and in obviously the passing the cost through. There are also mechanisms in terms of trading price reference, market price reference, that can provide a full transparency on the cost that the owner is about to pass to the charterers. So all these, I would say, are the basic, I would say, guidelines and recommendation we could make, and obviously that's we are there to support.
Yeah. So you mentioned transparency is important, data correctness.
Oh yeah, obviously emission is monitoring and tracking your emission is obviously very important. Yeah. But when I was referring to transparency, I'm more talking about pricing, market pricing. The charters would say, "Why did you buy at that level?" Okay, was it a good decision or not? No, the idea would be to eventually make reference to prices, benchmarks, so to speak. You can take the 20 DMA, for example, which is equivalent to a one calendar month. That could be used as a price reference for time charter. You're invoicing your charters on a monthly basis. You can use the settlement price that is published every day, which is the average of during 15 minutes before the market is closing. So that's all these various elements can be used as a reference price to make sure that, again, that is fully transparent towards your charterers, and you will be able to acknowledge that and to admit that it's the price reference to be taken.
Yeah. It sounds like a quite administrative and commercial process. We here in Europe just understood how it works, but shipping is international. Friederike, what do you think? What are the main challenges for the non-European shipping companies, and how can they meet this challenge?
I mean, in many ways, they are similar to European ship owners' challenges. You need to understand the regulation, but obviously, if you're not here and you're not used to how Europe thinks and acts, and you're not speaking the language and so on, it gets more complicated. So applying for a union registry account, for example, if you don't have a legal entity on the ground in Europe, if you don't have a European bank account, it's a challenge currently. So kind of the administrative hurdles are getting bigger. plus you probably have less of word of mouth between companies. You have less networks into the public administrations and so on. So we're currently being approached, especially by Asian shipping companies who face exactly that, and we are trying to help with. Despite us being a software company, we're trying to help with consulting services to help them cope with this. But I think yesterday night I had a discussion whether someone who's just ignoring it could escape it, and I don't think that's going to happen. So again, I think it's also about, we had this on the energy panel, right? If something needs to happen, we should also partner. I think helping each other and helping the international partners. I think shipping is such an international industry, actually is called for ETS. I mean, it's not much about competitive advantage currently. It's about managing the process together, and I think, yeah, calls for partnerships here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So. And just building on that, what should be if I hadn't done anything yet, what should be my last minute preparations?
Call 044, obviously, but no. I think work on those charter agreements, really, at least for those ships that are really trading into the European Union in January. You should have something in legal writing, because it can be about a lot of money. I would do that first.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Frederic. That was the recommendation section. And then, Frederic, I have a final question on EU ETS right now. And Frederic, on the prices, what is your expectation? Where will the prices go?
I wish I had the crystal ball. But obviously, no. It's a system. The EU ETS is a system that is working that has been in place for industry and aviation since many years. It's working because we have seen the emission level reduced in Europe. Unfortunately, with the Ukrainian war, suddenly people burning coal again, that it didn't work out that well for the last couple of years. But it's working. So the EU is controlling. It's a market. It's a financial market, but it's not working like a normal financial market, because EU is controlling the supply and the demand. It would be too long here to get into the detail of the market stability reserve, reduction of linear reduction factor, etc., etc. But it clearly, they are willing to bring that market towards the abatement cost, which obviously going to be different depending on which company we are talking about. And clearly, structurally, we see that market going up. If you look at the forward curve, price curve, it's in a steep contango. Clearly, we have seen recently a drop in the price due to reduced emission, obviously, and the commitment of trader that is published every Wednesday is showing that the net commitment of traders is still bearish, with shorts being in majority. So clearly, we see that 24 is probably going to be still sideline or bearish, but clearly as from 25, with all the elements, additional elements that are getting into place, the CBAM, for example, very important. I mean, it's the certificate that will be used for the CBAM, and that will have to be purchased. The price will be indexed on the EU ETS, and as you have no way to cover yourself when you have to buy CBAM certificates, you will buy an EUA to hedge your exposure on the CBAM under the CBAM system. So clearly, all these elements are important, and structurally, in a nutshell, this market is going to go up in the next few years. That's not a question.
Right. So that's the alley that we all have to walk. But avoiding CO2 emissions, that's another matter. And I'd like to move a little bit away from EU ETS and trying to reduce carbon emissions at the source. And Sander, you have a very, let's say, particular strategy on that. Can you shed some light on that, how you do that?
Yeah. While operating our existing vessels, which on average are, relatively old vessels already. Most of these feeder vessels have been designed, developed prior to the 2008 crisis. Yeah, And what they all have in common, and all the feeder vessels of our competitors have in common, is that they are all widely overpowered. Yeah? If I look at, for instance, one of the vessels we are very proud of, the CITAS 178 vessel, we have the Élysée. That's a vessel which can easily do 20.5 knots surface speed. And we only do that 1% at a time. And not because we need to or want to, but by mistake. Yeah? So it's totally ridiculous. We are sailing around with a huge main engine which can never be operated in an optimal manner. So that is something we need to address. So we can talk about CII, and we can talk about EU ETS, but the real topic is how to manage the extent of our fuel consumption and therefore our emissions. And we do that, of course, with a whole wide range of measures, short-term, mid, long-term orientated, but also long-term. But the thing you refer to, and that's maybe a bit more exceptional compared to what others are doing, we decided to invest in carbon capture technology. Mm-hmm. And last month, we finalized the installation of our 10th vessel with the Dutch-supplied filtering system, to which the carbon capture installation is an add-on. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And that allows us the optionality for carbon capture in the nearby future. These systems are operational, but there is not yet an economic model for it. So, of course, you need two to tango. It's a matter of, teaming up with your charterers, starting up that process, bringing it into practice, testing it, and get ready for the future. And I think that can really be a game changer. And I strongly believe that we will not be able to meet the industry targets without carbon capture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah?
Clearly, yes. Especially with so fast vessels. So.
Yeah, that's a specific problem while operating the older generation of container feeder vessels. Yeah.
And there might be also a market for fast feeder vessels, so let's not deny that, right? So, but how was the response of your charterers? So when they heard you were investing in CCS?
Well, they largely agree with our vision, and actually they are investing themselves. Okay. If you look at BG Freight, Samskip, some others as well, they are actually making this move for their own owned tonnage already. Yeah. So there's a wide consensus. But there's also still a hurdle to overcome. In the current regulations of EU ETS, there is not yet the possibility to deduct for captured carbon, at least not in a pragmatic manner. It's allowed under certain conditions when it's stored in the ground, but that's a holistic idea because it's not yet available. That will be 26, chemically bound. Not clear yet how that to interpret. Before the end of the year, they have to come with delegated acts to clarify that. And what we will rely on is to reuse the carbon we have captured, and that is not yet let's say, the third way that is accepted under the EU ETS. So, and that has to be overcome. And there have been proposals that before the end of 2024, the Commission has to come with new proposals also to allow for this third way. Mm-hmm. And then we have an economic model for our carbon capture, and then it will be widely used both by tonnage suppliers like us and charterers who have invested in this technology themselves. Yeah. So that's the future, at least in our industry, but we are not there yet to economically use it at a wider scale.
Yeah. Okay, I see that. Clearly understandable. So let's hope for EU to catch up with the regulation on carbon capture and storage. Tim, you run a very diversified fleet with several different interests. So what is your take on CCS technology? Would it be a solution for your fleet? or for parts of the fleet?
I think for reaching the targets on reducing CO2, we need to look in various options, and it's a proven technology, at least on shore. As we are here on Capital Link, and it's about capital and diversified fleet, it's something I need to sell to investors. And if you ask me on that technology, I have then started to make the math on when I use a different fuel, which is more expensive than the fuel I currently burn, for example, biofuel. So how far do I get until I have spent the amount of money I spent into this technology, especially for vessels in operation? So that's where I agree on that it makes sense for a certain size of vessels, certain trades, and as you said, Sander, it needs to be reused. So if it's just stored, okay, I have solved part of the problem, but as chemical industry is usually using CO2 for various topics, if we can establish a circular economy where, especially in Europe, on feeder trades, you can discharge it and there is a need, then it makes sense as well from the investment point of view. But if I have the opportunity, and of course then it's about availability, burning biofuel, paying slightly more, but how many years can I trade until I have reached the investment of carbon capture technology on board of the vessels?
Yeah. Very clear. Yes, absolutely. So depends very much on the business case and then, of course, on EU's regulations. We have about 3 minutes left. I have dozens of questions prepared, but I want to give you, the audience, the opportunity to ask some questions to the panelists. So what are your thoughts around carbon emissions, and what might be your questions that are burning and the panelists might answer? We need to do this exercise from Knut again, probably. So then it's time to wrap up. So this was the All About Carbon panel, and the highlights are: it's high time to get things organized, contracts and reporting to be in place, and then it's about energy efficiency. All about energy efficiency. Any ton that's not burned is not being emitted, obviously. And then it's about the skill education on shore and on land. It's important in order to get the reporting right, and also to increase the awareness for CO2 emissions. And then finally, carbon capture and storage we discussed here, and it might be an option when EU includes this into the reporting scheme. And of course, the business case must work for the trade that we are in. Thank you so much, and a big hand for all the panelists. Thank you.